And we need to check if the live streaming is up for the meeting. Let's see, Angela, the agendas, could you pass those out, please? So there are paper copies of the agenda for today's meeting. The basic outline is there on the screen. If you are live streaming, are we on, Ralph? Okay. So welcome live streaming members for our annual meeting. The agenda was at the bottom of today's e-news. So if you want to also see the outline of what we're doing today, it's on a slide. It's at the bottom of what was emailed this morning after the order of service is the order of what we're doing. So let me just pause for a minute, and we're passing out what's also on the screen, the outline of the meeting today. You can share, you don't have to take one, but it just gives you a way to follow. We made 25 copies and maybe it wasn't enough. So thank you for being here today, really grateful. Did everyone get one who'd like to see one? All right. Mike Stone, who is our clerk of session. Mike, is there a quorum? Yes, thank you. I call the annual congregational meeting of First Presbyterian Church of San Rafael to order. Let us open with prayer. Holy One, you want our individual lives and this church to flourish. Give us ears to hear and hearts to be open as we seek your guidance. As we reflect on this past year and look for the future, may we dream your dreams and together be a church who seeks to follow the ways of Jesus and welcomes all people. Amen. A reminder about a couple things, that only the items that are on the agenda are those in the call to the meeting, and that is what can be discussed. Only members of the congregation may vote. There are a couple items we will be voting on today. Because of Robert's Rules of Order, and Mike Stone has recently attended a meeting with the presbytery. Presbyterians are governed by the Robert's Rules of Order. They are updated, but they do address how meetings can be formatted and in terms of who's in the room and who's online. And there's some complexities around that. So the session made a decision to do this meeting this way. You need to be present to vote. Live streaming can be present. They can call in questions. We hope this is an unusual year. And going forward, when we call the annual meeting, you'll be here. We'll certainly continue to live stream worship, but just be aware we made some decisions this year that this is how we're going to operate. If those of you who are live streaming have a question during the meeting, the one option is you can call or text Susan Isler. So her number was in the email this morning. It's on the screen. We hope you don't continue to get calls and texts, Susan, after the meeting. But thank you. So, Mike, I think those were the things I needed to cover. Today we're going to pause and give thanks for what did happen in the life of our church in 21. There is great detail and description in the annual report, and I hope you'll take time to read it and to reflect on it. But we thought, the session thought it would also be good to have it visually. So let's pause and enjoy some pictures from the last year as we celebrate. And Sandra, would someone get the lights? what a year. So many wonderful things, so many hard things. All of that was true. As we look forward to this next year, I want to share just a few priorities and thoughts I shared with the session as we look forward to the next year. We obviously continue to maintain this facility, and I am grateful to the Facilities Committee of Bill Schultz and Ralph Lunan and John Robinson. Jerry Current has been part of that. I think part of what's coming into focus for us is that we are a community shaped by Celtic spirituality, that this reading of Newell and reflecting on it is more than just an academic exercise. I'm hearing people, it's resonating. And this might be a connection to the broader community as we talk about who we are as a church in an authentic way. That Celtic spirituality, the Christian version of that, the interfaith version of that, the earth connectedness. So I am thinking and wondering about how we continue in print, online, in worship, in the way we are doing our ministry, how that connects to these deeper Celtic themes. I think people are looking for entry points into the life of the church and hands-on opportunities. Some people in the 2 years, almost 2.5 now that I've been here, I hear people say, well, how can I help? How can I be involved? So continuing to think about entry points in addition to the work of committees and session and deacons, but during the week, what is needed? What are some entry points? All of that became almost impossible during the pandemic. But as people emerge and people are looking for connection, what are some ways we have hands-on ministry and mission to invite people to participate in? Those side doors into the life of the church, not necessarily Sunday worship, but events and mission and work together. That we continue to offer adult education and spiritual formation opportunities, Sunday mornings and other times, and that we get the word out. And that's the IJ, that's on Patch, that's on Facebook, that's on word of mouth, that's on Nextdoor. The world communicates online. It's not the only way, but it's a lot. Where can you put up a flyer? So to keep thinking, I want people to know about this, about what's happening at our church, and come to Nicole or me or the session and say, I have an idea of how some other ways to do that. Those are some of the things that are on my heart as I continue to think about the coming year. So I hope you will keep thinking and praying, and the session will continue to reflect on this for the coming year. I would like to shift now to introduce Mike Stone, Clerk of Session, who will provide his report.
One of the responsibilities of the clerk is to pay attention to numbers. And as Cynthia earlier indicated, numbers are not the way we measure whether we're doing the right thing, whether we're doing what we're called to do, whether we're doing it well. But numbers can be useful in some ways to begin to measure what are the things that we're doing seem to be reaching people, seem to be having an impact. And I think that what we found this year is we have worshiped in a lot of different ways. We had pre-recorded services. We've had services in person on the patio. We've had services in person here with masks, services without masks, services with masks again. We've had streamed services. We've had services which we posted online, and all of them, kind of surprisingly to me, they're pretty consistent. What we've been doing over the year has not fallen off. It's not particularly surged in membership or in attendance, and maybe that's not an important question. But these are also reminders, I guess, to me about some of the other ways that we invite people. That perhaps when people are cautious, they don't know what we are, and they can see us online, and people have found us online. One of the things that I'm required to do for the session meetings is every month report on what the attendance was, what the worship attendance was during the month in all of those different kinds of ways. And then when I do the annual report, I go back and relook at those numbers, update them especially with what's available through YouTube. And I find that there's a certain number of people who have worshiped with us at the end of a month, and by the end of the year, more people worshiped in that worship service than we had in the month. So even throughout the year, people are continuing to connect with us, and I think at least those are reminders of some of the opportunities we have. As Cynthia indicated, reminded us, it's been a hard year. One of the ways that it's been a hard year is the people we've lost during this year. I'd like to take a moment to remember Diane Current, Roy Enos, Barbara Marino, Alan Pabst, Albert Sarhad, William Scully, Gary Truex, as well as the people who are members of families of people in the church, people who have been great friends of people in the church. This congregation has suffered a lot of loss this year. And if you would, let's take one moment to remember those people. Thank you. We have a little bit of business to do, housekeeping. Cynthia mentioned the Robert's Rules of Order. One of the things that we are a connectional church, the Presbyterian Church is a connectional church, and so we have ways that we are ordered that way. The Book of Order, which is essentially the church's constitution, this congregation is also responsible to. Robert's Rules of Order, it turns out, we just learned, is a very educational job being clerk and finding out things like that. I never knew that the Book of Order defaults to Robert's Rules of Order. And so if something isn't in the Book of Order, but it is in Robert's, then we're also subject to it. And it also turns out that those are not Robert's handy suggestions. They are Robert's rules. And we're also a nonprofit corporation chartered by the state of California. So all of those things we have to stay in conformance to. And so we have a couple of little things to do, most of them which have to do with amending the bylaws so that we remain in conformance. One of the things that's happened with all organizations over the last couple of years is realizing that there are ways to meet by Zoom, by conference call, other ways that there were not necessarily provisions for before. And so Robert's Rules allows a congregation to meet by Zoom, allows the session to meet by Zoom, allows the deacons to meet by Zoom if the bylaws account for it, if the bylaws provide for it. And ours don't yet. And so one of the things we're going to do today is to vote on some amendments to those bylaws that will then make all of our meetings valid going forward. There are a few other things in the bylaws amendments. We put those, made them available through the e-news and other ways. So I'm not going to walk through those amendments, but I can answer questions about them. Most of those amendments do have to do with the terms under which we can hold meetings, the terms under which we can call meetings if there's an emergency, ways that we might be able, a session is occasionally between meetings had some business it had to do, and there are ways that you're allowed to do that by email if you have provisions for it. And so part of that, we've just also cleaned up the bylaws a little bit with some things that we had missed before or learned before. The Book of Order again requires that, or makes a limit on how many years in a row, consecutive years, a person can serve on session or on deacons. And the last time we amended the bylaws, we worked that requirement with terms of session. We did not do it with deacons, and so the new recommendations for those provisions include that. So are there any questions? I see none. I move then that we adopt the bylaws as were posted and were available to people through the e-news. Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Now, about those invalid meetings. It turns out that the meetings we've been holding over much of the last 2 years aren't valid, and so the actions we've taken in them are not approved. Fortunately, now that we have cleaned up that with the bylaws, we can go back and attend to that. So I further move that actions taken at the May 31st, 2020, January 31st, 2021, and April 18th, 2021, that those actions be ratified. Basically, the actions we took there are mostly to approve the pastor's terms of call and to elect officers. But we, again, those of us who have been serving as officers would like to know that we have actually been officers. So again, I move that we ratify the actions taken at those 3 congregational meetings. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. I feel so official. And now I'll introduce Bill Schultz, the chair of the Facilities Committee.
Privileged to be able to take my mask off. I'm Bill Schultz and representing facilities. Usually when you hear Facilities Committee, your mind runs to changing light bulbs and getting the sidewalks fixed and all those kinds of things, leaks. Responsibilities of Facilities Committee is to manage our rentals. And there are a lot of rentals in this place, probably more than you can imagine. But some of them are one-offs, some of them are short-term, some of them are ongoing. And, for example, Marcia's music school has been there a long time, and the same with Interfaith. So we have a lot of a big mixture of facilities use here. Fortunately, we have Ann Pope on our office staff who is very capable in keeping track of all the details and so forth. But we were all kind of taken back when the panic of the pandemic hit a couple years ago, and of course this changed how people meet, and therefore we begin to see significant parts of our rentals disappearing, and at least temporarily. Just to give you an idea, we had about 130,000 a year in rentals as kind of our high point, and with the pandemic that kind of fell off by about 30%, maybe a little more at times. Anyway, we were struggling with that, and then in the middle of last year, we had another kick in the stomach when we learned that our long-term tenant, Head Start, that ran the preschool program for almost 20 years downstairs, Head Start decided they needed to move on. And although it was not, there was no acrimony about disputes of, we really don't know why they left, we'll put it that way. But it happened, and so all of a sudden we have this prime space on our first floor that's all set up for basically a preschool, and we could convert it to offices, we could do this, we could do that, but we really wanted to have another preschool in there because it was part of our outreach to the community as well as an income source. So Cynthia put together a blue ribbon team led by my better half, Jenny, and they went to work looking for suitable replacements for the Head Start. And we had several inquiries. None of them seemed to be just right, but then we happened on to the old Firehouse School organization, and not only were they willing to pay a significant increase over what we had seen in the past, they were also very organized. They have 3 other schools, 2 in the East Bay, 1 in Mill Valley. They had a good, competent staff, and they had goals as to how they wanted to develop the education of these little kids. So we kept talking, and as you can imagine, there were multitudes of issues to be resolved, and we worked through them together. And the good news is, by the end of the year, we had a new lease, and they have been working very diligently and getting all their other permits and actions, some significant redecorating, to prepare to get some kids in there. And we're hoping, still hoping, that we can do that by that they can do that by the end of the month of February, sorry. And so we're trying to make the way. Of course, some of it is facilities oriented, and so we've had to do our part to get ready, and they have made some improvements themselves. So we're very happy with the outcome. Hope that it all progresses as hopefully as we had hoped for, and we would like to give you an opportunity to take a look at what they've done down in the area down on the first floor. So if any of you are interested, we will have a brief tour, really a look-see more than a tour, to just give you a feel for how they've changed things. And we'll meet in the narthex after this meeting if you're interested in going down and having a look. So I'm happy to say I have no motions, I have no nothing after this, I'm just reporting. Thank you.
Before Lynn McDermott comes up, I just want to give a special thanks to Jenny and Bill Schultz for the work they did on this project. Leslie Purdy was also part of the team, and Pope, and Nancy. Why can't I? Boyce. Nancy Boyce. And Dan Crawford helped make the connection with the presbytery. In Presbyterian churches, we don't actually own the building, it belongs to the presbytery, so they have to sign off on the lease. I was naive, thinking, oh, we've had a preschool, we'll get another preschool. It wasn't. It was very, very complicated. So I'd like to introduce now Lynn McDermott, Chair of our Finance Committee.
Hello. I'll start with a brief review of our results for 2021. We had a budgeted net loss of $38,237, but our actual result was almost $10,000 better than that. Rental income was lower, as Bill discussed, for two reasons. One was the loss of Head Start, and the other was that the pandemic lingered longer than anticipated. However, the rental shortfall was almost completely made up for by generous contributions, both pledged and non-pledged. Also, overall expenses were below budget, so the bottom line was very good news. The budget for this year is even better looking. Rental income is higher because of our new tenant, and pledged income continues to be very strong. Personnel expenses include proposed cost of living increases, and facilities expenses are slightly higher than last year because of some additional planned expenditures. The bottom line is a net loss of $9,581. Although we still have the goal of a balanced budget, and we're not quite there yet, this budget is a significant improvement over the past 2 years. It is also a reflection of the vitality of our church in that rather than cutting costs and contracting, we are continuing to offer beautiful worship services, pastoral care, mission projects, spiritual and educational programs, and much more. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Okay, thank you.
The page that's on the slide is in the annual report, so please feel free to really study it. If you do think of questions, ask Lynn or send them to the session. But all of this information is there written. The PDF is on the website, and again, there are printed copies, so please feel free to do that. But what a great joy to be able to see a projected shortfall of under 10,000, and maybe we'll have a balanced budget, but it's a real reflection of your commitments and the generosity, and to have our new partner in early childhood education starting, and they are just wonderful, so we have a lot to look forward to. It is now my responsibility to introduce the nominating committee who will be working together. Oh, sorry. Terms of call. How did I miss that? That's okay. Lynn gets to come back, and I get to leave.
All right. I'm here to introduce the pastor's terms of call for 2022. We have, it's up on the screen as you can see. It's the salary is an increase in accordance with cost of living guidelines of just over 5%. And then the other figures are mostly percentages of that as defined by the presbytery. So I move that we accept these terms of call. Is there a second? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The motion is passed.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the privilege of being your pastor. Thank you for the generosity of the gift at the end of 2021 and for this increase. I really am grateful for the opportunity. It'll be 3 years in April, which doesn't in some ways seem possible, but in other eyes, time has flown by. So, all right, now, moving on, right, nominating committee. So the way our rhythm is, remember, is we elected these folks last year for the coming year. So this is your 2022 nominating committee. The members at large, Dave Berta, Mike Nickel, and if you're here, please stand. George Rideout, Sue Rostoni. Those chosen by the session are Lynn McDermott and Jenny Schultz. And the deacon member of the nominating committee will be Dinah McClure. So thank you to our nominating committee. And I hope that if and when you are called, you will discern and be open to serving. So think about that in advance. And if there is someone you'd like to encourage to be an elder or deacon, talk to them about that and contact Jenny or Lynn as session members on the committee. That is all of the official business we have today. As Bill mentioned, those who would like to walk downstairs and see the classrooms, they're not completely finished, but you will be amazed at the transformation and the beauty down there to welcome young children. I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Second, let us close with prayer. Holy One of our coming and going, of our past, our present, and our future, we have gathered, we have worshiped, we have celebrated, we have remembered. We share hopes and dreams. As we go out, remind us that we do not go alone. As we go out, remind us that we go with hope. As we go out, may we be instruments of your love and light and peace each day. Amen. Thank you.